What I'm going to introduce right now is a session that we preserve for visionary speakers. Previous years, you have been preserving these for international speakers coming all the way maybe from Silicon Valley or Austria or somewhere out there. But this here actually it's quite different. We try to make it different so that we can have a different feeling of the conference. And the gentleman I'm going to introduce to you is 13 years old. He is going to talk about his journey as a software developer, and I think this is going a long way for our members and our attendees today, because this gentleman, we discovered him in one of our community in Kampala through our members, and he's doing a great and tremendous job. So Samuel Epodoi loves turning ideas into reality through code. Is very enthusiastic about artificial intelligence, algorithms, and serial entrepreneurship. He loves working with Ruby and Ruby on Rails, and he writes a lot of PHP, server-side and front-end code. He enjoys photography, soccer, and athletics. So give it up for Samuel as he comes on stage.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Samuel Epodoi, and I love turning ideas into reality through code. More specifically, I love building applications that solve real-world problems. During this speech, I will talk to you about how I started coding and address how Ruby has helped me, and talk about what I like most about Ruby. So in 2013, when I was 9 years old, my mom had a laptop that I would take advantage of to play online games. One game I specifically remember playing a lot was Formula 1. So at this point, I was looking for a certain game, and I couldn't find it. And given the fact that I was young, I did not have morale to keep looking. So I decided to find out how to make games, and that's where I discovered this thing called programming. So since I was in school, I didn't really have the time and opportunity to start coding. So later on that year, my brother got invited for, my brother who loves robotics engineering got invited for a robotics camp at Fundi Bots, which was held at MTN. So at that robotics camp, I found out a visual programming tool called Scratch, and that was where I decided to start. So with Scratch is a visual programming tool, and it also has a community where you can share different games and things you've built. So I started on Scratch. I built the game I wanted to build and many others, and with Scratch, I was also able to share the things I had built, and so I did Scratch for some time until the point I really felt that I had exhausted Scratch, and I decided to move on to learning another language. So I chose Python primarily just to get the fundamentals of programming, how the variables, the loops, and the different things in the programming world work. So I started Python, and while I was doing Python, my parents discovered my passion for programming, and they took me to visit many other people in the industry where I could ask as many questions as I wanted. And from that, I gained knowledge what languages I need to know to build a desktop app, an Android app, and many others. So from this, I was still doing Python, and I didn't really have the time, and I didn't have a laptop myself to do Python. So, and since I was in school, I wasn't really getting enough time to code Python. So my parents and I made a decision that I'd be homeschooled, and since I was doing the SE curriculum, SE stands for Accelerated Christian Education. So since I was doing that curriculum, I would still be in the community when I went homeschooling. The only thing that would be different was I would be studying in a learning center at home, which isn't school. I would still attend the sports and everything else. So it was a good decision. So when I started homeschooling, I also got a laptop, and I started coding. I started Python to finish it. And after Python, I wanted to do Java because I wanted to build an Android application, which I wanted to call GB Max, that would help you spend your data wisely. So Java had a very steep learning curve, and my computer didn't have the resources to run Java. So I then left Java and decided to embark on HTML and CSS and JavaScript. So actually, these languages were really easy to grasp. I was able to get them in a few months, and I got my first client for a website, which is a painting event in Kampala called Pay Night KLA. So I did their site. I made it as good as possible, and from that, I got another client, which was an e-commerce store, and I kept going that way. So I wasn't doing websites really for the money, but I was doing it to get experience and all that. So after some time, I realized it's actually good to charge the first few clients little money, but you do very good work for them, so that with the next clients, you have a portfolio to show them. And so these clients that you charge little money wouldn't mind paying you that little money, because, yeah, they wouldn't mind. So when you show these people the later ones, your portfolio, they are able to pay you the amount of money you're asking them for. So I attended my first hackathon last year, which was called I Am the Code Hackathon, that was held at Hive Collab, and in which at this hackathon, me and my team built a platform that was supposed to help stop trafficking. So this thing we built was called Taken, and the event was organized by I Am the Code and Booking.com. So after this hackathon, I realized that it's good to find an idea, to find a problem, then technologically develop a solution for it. So I found a problem in our country, Uganda, and I developed a solution. I am developing a solution for it called Skill. Yeah. So that's my story until where I am now, Ruby. So earlier this year, my friend told me about Ruby and how good it is. So I went and researched on it, and on the first term holiday, when I took my brother for another robotics camp at the Innovation Village, I met Alex Shaka, who became my mentor, who also told me about Ruby, who guided me on Ruby. He showed me how Ruby works and how effective it is. He also told me that most startups in Silicon Valley use Ruby to develop MVPs and develop solutions really fast. So I then started to learn Ruby, and Ruby is a general purpose object-oriented programming language, and Ruby on Rails is a Ruby framework that uses most of the utilities to run complex from the Ruby language to run complex actions. So when I compare, at the hackathon, the time of the hackathon, I was doing PHP, MySQL, I was doing the LAMP stack, and when I compare Ruby on Rails and PHP, I realized that it's much easier and faster to build a CRUD system. So CRUD is create, read, update, and delete. So What I like most about Ruby is the MVC architecture. I like the way it organizes the business logic from your application. So the MVC architecture is model, view, controller, and it's a design pattern for structuring software systems. The model is the layer between a database and an application that handles the business logic related to a specific entry. Each model is responsible for a different entity and for connecting this entity with other entities. Models are evoked by controllers. So a controller is responsible for handling input data, choosing appropriate actions, and returning the resulting responses. So for example, a controller receives data for the client, and okay, let me give an example. So when someone signs up, they put in their data and they submit it, so this goes to the controller. So the controller is going to authenticate that data and then authorize and then filter it and then call methods from the model and then determine what way to give a response, like you have successfully logged in or signed up. So now the views in the MVC architecture is now the front end. It's the only part of your site where the user interacts with. So from Ruby on Rails, I was able to I'm building a web application called the Art Room, which enables people in Uganda to order paintings online without any hassle. I'm also working on a boilerplate for people who are starting Ruby projects. So if you're starting like a project, it has UI components and a few things that help you build your project faster. And I would like to encourage each and everyone who's probably starting out to find their passion. It may not be in coding. To find your passion, to work hard unto achieving that passion, not to hold yourself back, and not to give up and dream big. So I'm going to take 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
How was it with your first customer?
It was actually good because since it's founded in our neighborhood, so I knew the owners, and it was okay. Yeah, I'd been doing things with them, I'd been painting with them and things like that. Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay, you talked about skill.
Yeah. Skill, you can come to talk to me after, and I'll tell you what skill is. Yes. All right. Thank you for listening.
That's quite an inspiration for the ones who are starting, businesses. And as all of you know, that entrepreneurship is not that easy. So when a young gentleman from Africa, per se, takes the risk of starting a business, I think that's something worth noting. We are live on Facebook, so if you are tweeting, you can tweet your friends and tell them on their way here, they can keep following the conference on Facebook. So our page is Nairobi KE, and the hashtag for today is RubyConfKE 2018. So on your program, you can see that somewhere. If it's not there, so we'll just display where it is as we go on.